reporting for TTN-HD Production Live, here with casting director Kelli Lerner. What inspired you to become a casting director?
Well, initially my plan was to be an actor. I went to NYU to School of Performing Arts and majored in theater there, and couldn't picture myself doing anything other than acting. And once I graduated, I got a couple of professional jobs, a professional theater job and a film job, and got my union cards and everything. And in between auditioning and stuff, I was temping and working as a waitress and all that. And I said, you know, there's got to be a better way to make money. And so I started a company called Artistic Endeavors, and I ran workshops, but these were for professional performers, like Broadway actors who wanted to connect and meet with people in the industry. Well, I had already contacted, my roommate was a casting director, and she was casting some huge Broadway shows. So she was the first person I brought on board. Shortly thereafter, I started bringing on other casting directors and producers, and had this very large business. One of the teachers was a writer, producer, director at HBO. And one day we were having a conversation, and he said, you know, we have hired and fired 2 different casting directors for this show we're working on called Chat Zone. And I don't know what to do. I'm worried I'm going to lose my job. So I said, tell me about it. So he told me about it, and I said, oh, you guys are doing it all wrong. Here's how I would do it. And I gave him my opinion. The next day I got a call from the creative director at HBO, and she said, would you mind sharing your idea with me? So I told her, and she called me back, and she said, would you like to cast the show? And I said, well, you know, I'm an actor. I don't know how to cast, you know. And she said, we'll pay you. That was number one. I was like, I'm down for that. And I'm like, as long as you know that I am going to be faking my way through this, I'll do it, as long as you don't have high expectations. I did the show. It was very successful, and to this day I still work with them, with HBO, and do promos for them. This is in New York City. I do promos, commercials, print work, different campaigns, like I worked on True Blood, did a viral campaign for them. After I got that HBO job, I connected with an amazing casting director in New York named James Clary. And I said, look, you know, I got this gig. I really don't know what I'm doing. He said, you know, I'm doing this Broadway workshop. Why don't you help me out for a couple of days? I did. I worked hard. A couple weeks later, I got a call from a woman who was the casting director for Clint Eastwood. Her name was Phyllis Huffman. Sadly, she passed away. And she said, James Clary gave me your number, and I'm doing you know, a movie with Clint, and there's a smaller project I'm working on. I don't really have time to do it. We just need one kid. Would you mind coming in? It's called Loverboy. So I said, sure, I'll do it. I had no idea what I was doing. No idea. I figured it out. I called a couple of people, got the kids to come in, and then she said, oh, by the way, you're going to be in the room with Kevin Bacon. Yeah. I know, exactly. I went in there, and nicest guy in the world. I mean, for my first experience like that, it couldn't have been better. Worked with him for a couple of days. Because that went well, they gave my name to another casting director, Mally Finn, who has also unfortunately passed away, and got working on Dark Water as a New York casting director, which was a Jennifer Connelly film. And my career started just venturing into film. So I set up shop, opened up a company called Artistic Endeavors. I'm sorry, I had Artistic Endeavors, but decided to turn it into a casting office. And then slowly that transformed into Kelli Lerner Casting. And then I kept having to fly back and forth to Los Angeles. So my husband was doing his residency, and he was just finishing up. And I said, look, you know, we have to make a decision here. And so we decided to move to LA, and, you know, he got a job at UCLA. And so my office now, we do everything. We do film, television, commercials, industrials, internet stuff. Yeah.
And what's the most rewarding part of your job?
I would say working with the actors, because I've been on the other side of the table, and it's a very vulnerable position to be in, and it's nice that when they come in the room, I like to work with them. I really enjoy the directing part of being a casting director, and I just find it really rewarding working with the actors.
Tell me a bit more about your casting process. How do you select people to come in and then work with them and then finally make a decision?
Okay, that's a great question. There's a couple different ways of going about it. When I'm working on something like a studio film, for example, we do something called offers, okay? Mm-hmm. And so we don't audition Angelina Jolie. No. Angelina Jolie doesn't audition. We have something called an offer, and we put a set amount of money, and she, trailer and all that stuff is in the deal, and that's it, and it's a yes or no, and we put the pieces of those puzzles together. However, I also I'm working with a producer-director, A.D. Calvo. He has a company called Goodnight Films, and he does a lot of low-budget stuff. And with him, it's an entirely different process where we actually do audition actors. And so what I do is there's a company called Breakdown Services that I use, and all the agents submit, and I go through headshots and resumes, and based on their look, based on their experience, and a lot of these people are name actors, that's who I decide to bring in. They come in, they read for me, and if they're good and we like them, I bring them in for a callback. In terms of who makes the final decision, that depends on the director and producer that I'm working with. With this director, A.D. Calvo, for example, we work as a team. We decide on the cast together. With HBO, there are certain groups where I bring people in and they decide. I have no say. There are other occasions where they say, you pick the people. So it really depends on the project.
And what's the #1 mistake actors make when they come in to audition for you?
I think the #1 mistake actors make is not being prepared. And one of the things about being on camera now, for example, my director is in Connecticut, so he's just watching tape, and a lot of actors, we have something called sides, which is their script that they're reading from. It's a small scene, and they'll have their head in the sides, and there's no connection there. And they haven't read the script. They're not familiar with the lines, so essentially they're just reading. Well, the problem is that there are people out there who are able to master memorizing something in a short period of time, and those people have a much better, they're much more likely to get a call back just because they're interesting to watch. So I would say lack of preparation, which to me is inexcusable.
You're very busy casting. How do you balance your personal life and your career?
Well, I have 2 children now. I have a 3.5-year-old daughter and a son who's 21 months old, and I'm not going to lie, it's very difficult. I'm very fortunate that my husband is extremely supportive, and his job is flexible so that we're able to work the schedules out. I also have the support of my family, my mom and dad in particular, who basically drive up from San Diego every weekend because I do often have to work on weekends. Between my mom, my dad, and my husband, I'm able to have this career.
What advice would you give to upcoming casting directors?
Wow. Well, I'm kind of the wrong person to ask because what most people do is they do an internship, then they become an assistant, then they become an associate, and then eventually delve into become a casting director. I just became a casting director. So I think if you're somebody that's really ambitious and a really confident person, and you have that entrepreneurial spirit to you, I think that you should intern for a little while, figure it out, and just go for it. But again, the proper way to do it, find a great office, an office that casts a lot of big stuff, and intern and see what it's like. I think it's also helpful if you're somebody who's interested in becoming a casting director to really understand acting, and because we do have to direct the actors, and actors can be very sensitive and emotional, and sometimes they need to take time away to get to that emotional place. And if you are somebody who doesn't have a background in acting, I think it makes it a little more difficult for you.
What advice would you give to actors?
The advice I would give to actors, and I always say this, is having a great headshot and having a great resume that's something we expect. One thing that a lot of actors fail to do is to put on their business hat and be business savvy. So if you're not somebody that's good at marketing and promoting yourself, it is a good idea to get a manager or an agent, but it's also good to network. You know, a lot of people will they'll send me an email or they'll send me headshots and resumes, but the truth of the matter is, as casting directors, we're not at the top of the totem pole. You should go do your research, find out, you know, who's doing a movie and something you're interested in, and get in touch with the director directly. Write the director an email, send the director a letter. Hey, I'm familiar with your work. I really respect you. Would you mind me coming in? I can't tell you how many, every single project, with every director I've ever worked on, there's always been, you need to bring in, you know, and it's always 3 or 4 people. And I don't even ask why. I know there's some sort of contact or connection there, whether it's a friend, whether it was a letter, or whatever. Networking, though, is essential.
Okay. What have been some of the highlights of your career?
I think some of the highlights of my career have been films where I was also able to work as a producer on the film. One film in particular, Fat Girls, this young kid came up to me. He was an actor, and he wrote a script, and his manager begged me to read it. It was great. And this kid made it happen, and it was just a really cool project to work on, and we ended up getting some great people, and the film was made, you know, with barely any money, and it ended up getting a theatrical release. And I've had that opportunity with Goodnight Films to work as a co-producer. So I you know, every project's different, and sometimes it's the project and sometimes it's the people. I love working with HBO. They've been amazing to me. I would say 99.9% of the experiences that I've had in terms of casting have been good. There have been a couple of bad experiences where I've had to say no thank you, or I've turned down projects because I knew the situation wasn't right. But each project I work on is unique, and or even working on commercials, for example, they're fun because they're fast and they're quick, and that's a whole different thing altogether.
What are your goals for the future?
Wow, that you're okay. Now, me saying this publicly, this is stressing me out. But honestly, I always want to continue with casting. I do want to move forward into producing and eventually directing. To be perfectly honest.
How did you get involved in the Casting Society of America? How did you become a member?
Okay, well, in order to become a member, and the rules might have changed, and I might be messing this up, but you have had to have been the head casting director on, for example, like 2 feature films, and then you need to have 2 people in C.S.A., Casting Society of America, sponsor you. So, for example, James Collery and Phyllis Huffman sponsored me. I was really fortunate because within a year's time, I had done those smaller films, and then I booked a job called Slingshot I cast David Arquette, Juliana Margulies. I was the head casting director on that and in another film, and just was very fortunate and said that was my next big goal, and I just made it happen.
So how long would this process normally take?
You know, I really can't comment on that. I think it just depends on each individual's career path. You can be a member as an associate as well, and it's really nice to be a member because the C.S.A. has a great reputation, and they they take care of their members. So it really just depends on the individual.
You're a teacher as well. What inspired you to start teaching?
Well, I'm not really a teacher. I teach a lot of seminars and workshops for actors. I do everything from working with people who work on a regular basis and just sort of getting them to stay on track, to brand new actors and teaching them about what a good headshot should look like and a good resume. So sometimes I'll do like a one-nighter somewhere, or I'll do, you know, a 4-week workshop. But it's actually a passion of mine, especially with the newbies, because they're putting themselves in front of casting directors when they're not necessarily ready to do that. And I always say, hey, with me, it's cool, but you know, we got to fix this headshot and resume, you know, and for many people, they actually, I have to tell them they need to go back and get some training. A lot of people want to be an actor and they don't realize, you know, most people need some kind of formal training. You don't just get up and say lines. It's very difficult to get to that emotional place. It's very hard work. So, yeah.
And you've been writing some articles as well on casting. Tell me a bit about that.
I have a fun little gig with Life and Style magazine where they'll contact me and ask for quotes, you know, whether it's about like the next Twilight movie, or for example, I just wrote something about a film that's coming out, a biopic about Liberace, and so they'll quote me. It's just a fun little thing to do with them as well.
Do you have people calling you and saying, "Oh, I saw your quote in Life and Style"?
No. Oh. Not really. You know what happens is I end up writing like a novel, and then they put like one line in there. Casting director Kelli Lerner said so. But no, but I love them over there, and it's just a fun thing to do. Yeah.
And where's the best place to find more information out on you online?
You can go to KelliLernerCasting.com. That's KELLILERNER casting.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Kelli, and best of luck with your family and with your career in casting and producing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm Katie Uhlmann reporting for TTN-HD Production Live.